Ah, dear. Whereabouts are you at the moment?
I am at home in Seattle, Washington.
Ah, good. Now, I thought you guys were in. So you came from Grand Rapids.
That's correct. Yeah. So we are, most of us originally are from Grand Rapids, but we're scattered about the globe in the year 2024. So two still in Michigan, one in Grand Rapids, one on the East Coast, me out west, and then we have one in Australia. So we're a global act now.
Where does which city does the one that lives in Australia? Do they live in Sydney?
No, he lives on the sunny coast. He previously lived in Sydney. He's kind of been all over, but he lives in Queensland on the sunny coast.
Ah, fair. Okay, I'm in Brisbane. I'm in Queensland as well.
Oh, right on. Perfect.
Yeah. Um. So, mate, take me back to 2014, 2015. Like, how would you describe the vibe going into the rooms of the house recording sessions?
Uh, well, you're asking me to think 10 years back, which is a question I should have been prepared for. I remember there being a lot of momentum. I think that off the back of Wildlife touring for 3 years, we were pretty antsy to be invested in a new project and spent a considerable amount of time kind of plotting out ideas and concepts and new approaches to songwriting. So I remember being pretty heavily invested. We were all still living in the same area, and it was a little, time together was a bit more accessible. So I think just really zeroed in on the project we'd laid out and excited to really like fully capture all the ideas, themes, concepts, songwriting approaches, styles that we'd been tinkering with. So I think it's a pretty simple answer, but I think we were just pretty fucking excited.
Yeah. What has it been like revisiting this album?
You know, this is the second consecutive anniversary thing we've done out of COVID. So, um, yeah, the first one for Wildlife was different than this one in that Wildlife felt really like a time capsule, like an era in our life that we'd evolved from and grown from, but had left considerable distance between us and the present version of ourselves. Whereas the subject matter on Rooms, I think, resonated in a way that Wildlife maybe did in a macro sense, but not in an individual sense, not on a micro level. This one is, I think I was kind of struck by how prescient a lot of the subject matter was for what we would experience in our individual lives in the time between. So it was like a pretty interesting personal exercise to kind of dive back into these songs and really think about them intently, not just play them at shows, but to really think about what the songs were about and what the records meant to us. So it was a different experience, but it's been really engaging in that sense. I think we've kind of learned a lot by going back to a record we wrote when we were young and maybe didn't fully understand the
Hmm.
concepts present on the record in a way that we would come to in adulthood.
Yeah. I I never thought I would ever be saying the sentence I'm about to say out loud, but someone recently shared Hanson. You remember, like the band Hanson from the
I
90s
did.
playing
I
this
do.
famous song Bop and saying the lyrics to this really hit hard when you're in your late 30s. And holy shit, they were not kidding. Like,
Really?
it is literally all about growing up and your circle getting smaller and, people letting you down. So I was like, oh my God, my future self got pulled out by Hanson.
And that's pretty remarkable because if memory serves, they were pretty young people at the time, or at
Tiny
least
little people.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like accidentally capture you know, long lasting subject matter just through the urgency of youth, I guess. I'll have to
Yeah.
revisit Mbop. I haven't thought about that song in a long time, and I don't think I've ever thought about it intently. So
Yeah, no, I must admit I'd never actually paid attention to the lyrics and I listened to it. I was like, oh my God. Jesus. And mate,
That's hilarious.
I understand. Were you in Australia last year or a year before?
Yeah. Oh my goodness gracious. We were in Australia for the wildlife tour, and that would have been, yeah, last year?
Yeah. Because
Somewhat recently. I've lost track of time.
I understand
Post-COVID, I don't understand how time passes, but go ahead.
this is true. I understand you played with one of my favorite Australian bands, Blind Girls. Um, what do you most remember about them?
I mean, they're really beautiful people. It was really excellent to get to travel with them and to spend time with them. They're all just like it was fun. It was fun to play with a screamo band that had a working knowledge of a considerable amount of bands we grew up with that are so far off the grid because they're really students of the genre. So we got to like have some pretty fun conversations about bands that I'd kind of forgotten that we grew up with that never really, you know, did anything in a visible sense beyond just like the Scrams DIY network of 2007 and 2008. So it was fun to just like talk shop and shoot the shit with them. But really, they're wonderful people. They're so much fun to be around, and they are such a punishing live band. And I say that in the most complimentary sense, just like everything you'd want uh, from listening to the record in a live environment is there and more. It's just very frenetic and intense, but really locked in. And just getting to watch them play every night
Mm.
was pretty awesome. And getting to watch a lot of people who maybe had not been introduced to a band like Blind Girls before just get pummeled by it and find out they enjoyed it was really rewarding. So they're fucking great. They're such an amazing band. They were the one. They were. I feel like I always push for the screamo band, and it doesn't always work out that way. So I was like pretty geeked that we all landed on Blind Girls for support, and it was everything I wanted it to be and more. So fucking great band.
Absolutely face melting. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. If I had hair, they would have blown it back.
Same.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, dear. Mate, I understand you'll be staying in Sydney after this show to record your new album. So what drew you to Sydney to record?
Um, a number of factors. I mean, it's a little tricky to make things work logistically in 2024, given the distance between us all. And we had our sights set on playing some anniversary shows. So there was like a logistical aspect to it. But I think the biggest thing was we wanted to kind of branch out and have a little more control over how things are. Well, not even that. We had a lot of control in every previous iteration of our band and every recording experience, but um, we have kind of the technical know-how, or I shouldn't say we, I should say members in our band, because I don't have any technical know-how when it comes to recording or the like. But um, so we wanted to engineer and produce our own record, and through Brad, our drummer, who lives in Australia, we have uh, a lot of connections and um, found kind of the perfect spot for it. And I think it's also really been important to us to like alter environmental variables when we both write and record. I think that your surroundings have a considerable impact on how you operate creatively, and this was a new opportunity to see how external factors altered things sonically, lyrically, etc. So it's a new thing for us, and we'll be pretty isolated, and we're all pretty stoked. And you know, yeah, that's about it, I guess.
So you haven't written anything yet?
We've been writing.
Oh, okay.
We've been part of the reason that we ended up scaling back this tour was to focus on what felt like the more immediate thing, which was, we spent 2 years effectively touring for Wildlife, and I think got. I mean, it was immensely rewarding, and it was really fun to come back from COVID that way. But I think we really wanted to focus on the next chapter, and um, sort of had a renewed vigor to do so after being away from touring for the three COVID shutdown years, and then 2 years of playing a record we'd written 12 years prior. So, um, yeah, we scaled back this tour so we could really focus on that, and we've been tacking on time with all the shows we've been playing over the past kind of year and change, so that we can all be together in the same space. So we've done some writing in our home state, did some writing in Grand Rapids, did some writing in Detroit. We did some writing in the Philippines after a short little Southeast Asia tour, and then we did some more writing in the UK in the spring, early summer, after playing some shows over there. And then we have another show in our hometown in a few weeks, and then we have 10 days between that and our next show to hunker down and keep chipping away at it. And we've been actively sending stuff back and forth when we're not together. So we've been working on it for quite a while, and pretty full bore. So we're a chunk of the way through. We got some left to do, but we're like in the throes right now.
Is it too early to talk about potentially the sound that you guys are going for in this release? Is it hugely surprising?
I think revisiting these last two records, we kind of had the opportunity to take stock of what has and has not worked in the past, and try to really like narrow our focus as far as our approach goes. And I think you'll get a little bit of Panorama and a little bit of Rooms and a little bit of Wildlife. So there's some heavier and darker songs, and really trying to like mess with textures and try to do some interesting layering and additional instrumentation, and try some more stuff production wise that we haven't before, trying to just like not limit ourselves to what we can and cannot do. So I think it's going to run the gamut of what we've done previously, which is kind of a lot of different things. So, but there's definitely some heavy peaks and some darkness. I think, harkening back to what I said about environmental factors, I think that it's pretty difficult to not absorb some of the state of the world in the present day. So I expect that things will be a little more, I would say, bleak than, at least, I mean, not that we haven't been a bleak band in the past, but yeah. So there's a lot, and because we're not like quite at the finish line, I hesitate to say with any like certainty what the overall sonic profile will be. But I think that there'll be, maybe it's a cheap answer, but some of the same stuff, but some stuff we've never done before.
Yeah. Speaking of the kind of darkness and bleakness, I mean, your track, King Park, made me very grateful to live in a country where gun violence isn't, big of an issue. I mean, you grew up in Michigan. How has this issue affected your life?
Um, you know, I don't know that it's ever really affected my life directly. Um, the song King Park details two separate incidents that happened in the neighborhood um, that Brad, our drummer, is my cousin. His parents and my parents own a business where gun violence was a little more prevalent, but not directly in my, I would say, like primary community. So it was a kind of peripheral fallout. People that I knew who knew people who'd been impacted by acts of violence, in this case, gun violence. So I don't know that I've ever really felt like direct, immediate impact from living in a country that is, compared to the rest of the world, riddled with it. But I do think that um, there's a psychic impact of living somewhere that seems entirely opposed to preventative measure or the well-being of their citizenry in a lot of different ways. So not directly, but I think that's something that kind of hangs over your head with a lot of other broken things about this country.
Yeah. Do you who do you see like how would you describe the music scene in Grand Rapids when you guys were first starting?
The music scene in Grand Rapids when we were starting was pretty vibrant and remains that way for a city that is not the first you think of when you think of punk rock or whatever, or music generally. But like any other city, and I think anywhere that like has people who are willing to put the effort in, there were always shows, and we had venues of all sizes that were accessible to us, and a pretty rich community of bands to build off of and to work with and to grow up with. So I think growing up in Grand Rapids was really good for us in that sense. I mean, we could have grown up in New York, we could have grown up in Los Angeles, Chicago. No, and no disrespect to those places, obviously, but I think that uh, we like had to really forge a path with a lot of other people to have the opportunity to be a part of a music community. And fortunately, we had a lot of great bands and people who ran record labels and record stores and cooperatives and basements. And so I think really just pretty tight knit and pretty concerned with building something that could support people or that could give those without your typical outlet a place to go, a community to be a part of.
Yeah. Who do you see as the in the post-hardcore genre that you guys are known for? Who do you see as the most important bands in your eyes anyway?
Hmm. I mean, I think that the kind of North Star for everybody, at least in my circle, has been Fugazi. I think that like everything kind of comes from Discord in a way, um, especially bands that have a bent towards emotional content and intellectual exploration. So, I mean, bands like At the Drive-In were and Refused were like flashpoints for us because we were the right age. We were 14, 15 when those bands were putting out their best records or arguably their best records. So that was like, what introduced us to the genre or at least like made us want to be in a band. But finding Fugazi through my oldest brother when I was 12, 13 was like pretty life changing and continues to be a band that I think everybody looks up to, not just like on a moral level or not just on a musical level, but on an ethical level. So I would say Fugazi.
Yeah. Have you heard the recent news about Refused?
No, I have not.
Right. So they are announcing that they are done for good and they're going to be doing a final North American tour and they're going to be
Okay.
releasing a compilation album called The Shape of Punk to Come Obliterated with all the different people like doing different versions and all that kind of
Cool.
stuff. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, I didn't know that. Well, all good things come to an end eventually. I'll have to try to catch one of those shows.